I wanted you to know that although I don't get to respond to as many of the comments as I'd like, I'm still watching and I'm still listening. And I've been seeing an increasing number of commenters, as young as even 13 years old, who are distressed because they're showing an interest in the subculture, but they're forbidden to do so by way of their parents. Be it religion, racial, or just pure misconception, I'm getting questions or comments from the children of, say, devout Christians who think that goth is akin to Satanism. Or black children of black parents thinking that being a goth is something that only weird white kids do. So to that I say nope and nope. This video is in response to all of you younger kids that have reached out to me in regards to this issue, who really want to build a bridge between where they stand and their parents and help them understand what goth is, or more specifically, what goth is not. I hope that this video helps. I know that so many of you reached out and I felt really bad because I wasn't quite sure on how to address the issue, but I figured a video would probably be the best way to start. In this video, I'm going to address the more common misconceptions or ideas that people tend to have about what the goth subculture is all about, based on stereotype, based on media, based on basically just the idea that comes across, or people that may not be involved in the subculture at all, but like to sort of don the attire and may behave in a certain way that kind of tar us all with the same brush. So to the parents, perhaps you have a child that has an interest in the darker side of life. Perhaps they have a penchant for darker clothing. They might want to dye their hair red, blue, black. They might listen to music that you find a little bit creepy or disturbing, but rest assured there is nothing evil associated with what they're interested in. It's far more benign than you might think. They're just a goth. So to start off, what is a goth? Now I can go into the entire history of what goth is, but I'm going to try to liken it to something you might be familiar with. Also, I would highly recommend Google or wikiing goth, not gothic, but goth. And it'll really give you an idea of what the subculture is all about. But what I'm going to liken it to is the Addams Family. Despite their departure from the norm, they actually possess some pretty noble qualities. Yes, they're quite dark, but they're also passionate, loyal, cultured, with a sense of humor, and regardless, they're quite welcoming and eager to integrate with those who may not be in Addams. They might look a little bit unsettling from the outside, but they're the first ones to invite you over for a cup of tea and a chat, and you will leave surprisingly unscathed and uncorrupted. I want to touch on a few of the misconceptions that the parents of a budding gothling may focus on that may result in the child being stifled in their growth or their exploration in the subculture, or maybe even you forbidding them to explore it altogether. Is goth associated with any religion? No. I cannot emphasize this enough. The gothic subculture is not associated with any religion. Faith is something intrinsic to the individual. To those outside the subculture, and I'm quoting, believe that goths are either devil worshippers or witches. Goths are Christian, goths are Catholic, goths are Methodist, they're pagan, agnostic, Wiccan, Jedi. And the question on the most devout of faith parents' minds is, can a goth be a Satanist? Yes, but not because they're a goth. It's because they're a sentient human being that made that decision for themselves, and they're no more or less likely to be a Satanist than, say, a lumberjack from Kentucky. And continuing on that path of religion, if Christianity is what brought you to this video in the first place, I would highly recommend checking out ChristianGoth.com, finding the somber, romantic, melancholy beauty in the darkness, embracing the night but shunning all of which is evil. This is Christian Goth. I'm going to put a lot of other resources in the description, but it might also help you to look through them and maybe put your mind a little bit more at ease with regards to faith alongside the Gothic subculture. So I hope that really helps you. Is goth associated with drug use? Again, a resounding no. There is nothing goth about drug use. Being confronted with drugs or even experimenting is part of the teenage experience, and having any sort of subcultural affiliation or even musical preference, be it goth, rap, industrial, techno, country music, is not going to protect them from that. It doesn't discriminate. That being said though, put on the show Cops. Tell me how many times you see a goth meth head. Whether or not your child has it in them to experiment with any illegal substances is more down to you as a parent rather than being a goth. Teach them well, put the fear of death into them, and you've done your job. But taking away their black lipstick is not going to do anything to ensure a drug-free child. Are Goths prone to violent behavior? There have been unfortunate connections made between Goths and school shootings and murders. You had Roderick Farrell, Columbine, Scott Dulesky. They were disturbed individuals that donned a dark look. But this automatically put a target on the backs of Goths, and then the media just ran with it, and the fear-mongering began. This gave us a savage and unfair reputation, and we really suffered the repercussions because of the emotionally disturbed by way of an outside group who really can't tell the difference between Goths and some people who happen to wear black. Goths are not prone to violent behavior. In fact, Goths tend to be quite passive, creative, thoughtful, generally reserved. Frighteningly enough, when I was younger, violence tended to be directed toward us. When I got involved in the subculture, it was 1994. And though it existed, the internet wasn't exactly a feature in every household. Today, we can really credit its existence for introducing us to a lot of things, as well as giving us a higher tolerance for stuff via information and accessibility. Not so much when I was a kid, because back then, to everyone else, we were an assault on the senses and their sense of normality, so everyone else in turn assaulted us. So something you have to understand is this was also 23 years ago, and a lot's changed since then. So obviously people have become a lot more tolerant, and it's not that out of the norm to see somebody in the alternative subcultures. But that doesn't mean that this kind of thing still doesn't exist. It's just not nearly as bad as what it used to be. So contrary to my original statement, no, it is definitely not dangerous to be a Goth, whereas also Goths are not prone to violent behavior. No, it's not dangerous to be a Goth, nor are Goths prone to violent behavior. Are Goths depressed and prone to suicide? We are very passionate people, and we wear our emotions on our sleeves, and whereas other people may not feel so comfortable speaking about certain things, we're kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. We're quite comfortable discussing things that most people just aren't comfortable discussing. Mental illness is something that doesn't discriminate. Age, race, gender, subcultural affiliation. We're no more or less prone to suffering from mental illness than anybody else. Whereas it may seem that Goths are more prone to mental illness, depression, or suicide, we're just more open to talking about it. Whereas you find that the average person may tend to bottle it up, our propensity to speak openly and so freely about it may make it seem that our subculture and depression and suicide go hand in hand. But it doesn't. Does Goth music promote negative thinking and behaviors? Goth music is quite emotional. It tells a story of love, beauty, and romance. And whereas it may have very macabre and dark themes, the Beatles sang about drugs, and those are far more accessible than a vampire off in some candlelit ballroom. I've always found that the music is quite inspiring. It inspires creativity in people. Many who listen can attest to this, and whereas your child may go through a phase where they write incredibly bad poetry, they might get good at it, or they might put down the pen and go off and find some other creative hobby. Will my child even have a future growing up as a Goth? Your child will not grow up an unemployable, listless recluse, living off somewhere in a dead-end relationship in some cheap-ass apartment with all the walls painted black. I can promise you. I can't promise you the all-black walls, though. They're stylish. Just like all teens, Goths too will grow up, get an education, maybe even get married, have children, because they are normal people. Being a Goth doesn't make us any less of a value to society. We become doctors, lawyers, paramedics, skincare experts. We don't impose our lifestyle on others, and we certainly wouldn't impose our lifestyle on our children. We get what that self-discovery process is all about and how important it is to develop that sense of self. We wouldn't want it done to us, so we wouldn't dare impose those kinds of limitations on our own kids. I have friends who are parents, Gothic friends who are parents, and the children's nurseries look like nurseries. Their kids wear colors, they read children's books, they have a favorite cereal, they watch cartoons. We're not trying to raise the next Wednesday or Pugsley Addams, although that would be adorable, but we're just trying to raise happy, tolerant little humans. So if you are the parent of a child who is desperately trying to explore the Gothic subculture, I really would like to ask you to ask yourself what your motivation is behind forbidding them to do so. If it's more about what the neighbors may say as opposed to the happiness and emotional well-being of your child, what lesson do you think that your child will be taking away from this exercise? It's that dignity, happiness, and self-expression mean nothing in the name of keeping up appearances. Your teen years are meant to be the greatest years of your life. You're a young adult. You have no real responsibilities other than school and maybe a part-time job. It's a time of discovery, growth, life lessons, and fun. Did I mention fun? Being an adult, making it here, knowing that the world is out there and it has teeth, with all of the obligations, making sure that you make it to work every day despite the fact that you may have a cold because you have mortgage payments or car payments. I would hate to look back on my life, look back on my teen years, knowing that I had missed out on so many things, so many experiences, and so many things that I'd wanted to do just because my parents didn't like it, despite it being completely harmless. That would suck. So this is my cheesy plea to the parents. Please, don't stop them from their explorations. Just make sure whatever it is they do it safely. Who knows? They might get sick of it after a while and decide it's not for them, but they need the go-ahead from you so they can figure that out for themselves. Instead of looking at it from the outside, why don't you ask them about their interests? Who knows, their answers might surprise you. I hope this helped, guys. Bye.